Nosferatu, the film that cannot die. In a world of reboots, reimaginings, and remakes, there certainly is something eternal about Nosferatu. Robert Eggers' Nosferatu is revived from the 1922 silent film Nosferatu, A Symphony of Horror, which was almost completely erased from history, and adapted from the original vampire Bram Stoker's Dracula. The 100-year-old silent film follows vampire Count Orlok as he expresses interest in a new residence and a real estate agent's wife. Notice how Bram Stoker is credited as a writer for German film director F.W. Murnau's Gothic masterpiece. That is because the Dracula writer's widow, Florence Balcombe Stoker, became his literary executor after his death in 1911. She made a small income from the rights and permissions to her husband's work. However, Florence had given no permission and didn't receive any payment for the unauthorized adaptation of Dracula with Nosferatu. The film's promotional materials allegedly included a description of being freely adapted from Bram Stoker's Dracula. Her estate swiftly took legal action, resulting in the filmmakers to declare bankruptcy for their first and only production. The court ordered all of the negatives of the film to be destroyed. Ye old copyright infringement. So, how did Nosferatu survive? Well, it's speculated that after several years of legal action, Nosferatu had already been widely distributed across the world and essentially became untraceable. Universal Studios ended the legal squabbles and purchased the rights for $40,000, which is roughly around six figures in today's money. This allowed Florence Stoker to live out her days in comfort only after she successfully set a precedent for artists and filmmakers to eternally own the rights to their work. As a result, the world's first vampire film turned into one of the first major cases of film industry copyright infringement. Hi, my name is Courtney. You can call me Courts. I work in film and I post content about it. Yep. Today we're breaking down Robert Eggers' 2024 Nosferatu, which came out on Christmas Day. This is one of the most highly anticipated films of the year, and it definitely exceeded my expectations across the board. I feel like this is the movie that audiences will remember him for. Like, we're gonna go back and be like, oh, he hasn't made a good movie since Nosferatu. Like, everything's that's my prediction. Personally, as I mentioned in my Nosferatu trailer reaction, that I am not like a Robert Eggers fan. Typically, I've seen his movies in theaters, and each time I'm just like a little bored. But this is beyond, and I will say with my whole chest, this film is a masterpiece. If you have not seen it, you must see it. You do not need to watch the 1922 silent film to go and enjoy this movie. I love vampires, so let's get into it. But before we do, like this video, subscribe to my channel. I hit 1,000 subscribers last year in March. I can't wait to continue sharing a love for cinema here with you on this channel. So give me a big thumbs up and I hope you stick around. Quick overview, let's talk about it. Robert Eggers' Nosferatu is a gothic tale of obsession between a haunted young woman and the terrifying vampire infatuated with her, causing untold horror in its wake. Let's get into some themes. Besides obsession, this film has themes of a longing, dread, and sensuality. Not sexuality, sensuality. A classic gothic romance. But what is a gothic romance? Well, let me tell you. A gothic romance is described as a suspenseful and mysterious, thrilling gothic fiction that focuses on romance while also being dark and spooky. So I know Nosferatu isn't forwardly romantic as it is horrific, but the undertones are definitely there. Count Orlok, played by Bill Skarsgard, his whole motive throughout the film is to be reunited with Ellen, who's played by Rose Depp, and he will stop at nothing to sacrifice everything to have her. So the romance is definitely there, especially in the relationship between Ellen and her husband Thomas, who is played by Nicholas Holt. It's their love and unity that wakes Orlok from his slumber. The marriage between Ellen and Thomas triggers the vampire to seek out Ellen, as he believes her to already be his bride, his property, whatever you want to call it. That's where Robert Eggers begins in Nosferatu. So let's break down the plot. Let's catch everybody up. The beginning of the film, the happy couple seem to be doing just fine until Ellen begins having off-putting nightmares where she uncontrollably writhes in pain and maybe pleasure. She worries for her husband as he is set to meet with the mysterious Count, who wishes to purchase a piece of property from the real estate firm that he works for. If he sells the property, he makes himself a permanent position at the firm. Ellen begs him not to leave as she cannot fathom being alone in the midst of her nightmares. She's overcome with dread but cannot explain why. Thomas, being a good husband, wanting to provide for his young wife, takes the job and travels to Transylvania to seek out Count Orlok and seal the deal. He leaves Ellen with a trusted family friend, Friedrich Harding, aka Aaron Taylor Johnson, and his wife, Anna, played by Emma Corrin, Anna being Ellen's best friend. On his travels, he discovers a village to rest for the night, where he encounters what appears to be a virgin sacrifice. Perhaps the villagers had been making these sacrifices to keep Count Orlok away, a nod to some Dracula lore. Coincidentally, though, the virgin that they are sacrificing looks a lot like Ellen, perhaps foreshadowing her ultimate sacrifice in the end. Upon his arrival, Thomas is welcomed by the Count. He leads Thomas up to a dark room and urges him to sign the real estate agreement as soon as possible. Thomas signs his portion of the contract, and after staying at the castle for too long, Thomas becomes suspicious when he discovers bite marks on his chest and experiences wild, vivid visions at night. He finds Count Orlok asleep in his tomb, where he wakes just as Thomas is about to stab him in the chest. Running for his life, Thomas makes it out of the castle, falling off a cliff, but not before Count Orlok reveals his true intentions, which is to claim Ellen as his own. Meanwhile, Ellen's night terrors grow more and more intense, and the Harding family seeks out all the help they can in curing her. So enter Willem Defoe as Professor Alban Eberhard von Franz, an eccentric character who has dabbled in the study of alchemy and the occult. He proves to be very helpful in diagnosing Ellen, as the local doctors had more primitive methods, such as tying her to a bed and knocking her out. He refers to Ellen as an enchantress and explains that she isn't dreaming during her episodes, but is having an out-of-body experience, traveling to another realm, a realm where she can connect with Count Orlok. Thomas arrives home miraculously, and Count Orlok is not far behind. Ellen tries to explain herself to Thomas and even shuns him from her, but his love is too strong and he refuses to give up. They then become intimate with one another, which could be confusing and off-putting if you don't understand that Ellen is trying to save him from her true self, a side of herself she had not been accepting of her whole life, a side she didn't even really understand existed, her supernatural enchantress self. Count Orlok makes a smashing arrival by crashing a ship into the port that is managed by Friedrich Harding. The Harding family unfortunately becomes swirled into the madness, as the ship that Count Orlok crashed is full of rats, but not just any rats, plague rats. At this point, we also realize that Thomas actually signed his wife away to Count Orlok and not a piece of real estate. We also get the context as to why he was called to Ellen in the beginning. Professor Alban explains that her enchantress abilities were so strong that when she called out into the abyss as a young girl seeking for love, she accidentally summoned Count Orlok. Her convulsions were not a result of him possessing her, but rather that she was able to astral travel, meet him in other realms, and maybe even be intimate with him in other realms. Climax of the film, Orlok appears to her, at this time in the flesh, threatens her, and tells her she has 3 nights to submit to him before he destroys everything and everyone she loves. In the beginning of the film, Ellen says she has dreams where there are bodies on bodies, so many bodies that there aren't any survivors to bury the dead. Orlok had been showing her a vision of a future where she did not submit to him, and that is why she ultimately decided to give herself up to him. The final shot poetically references their interconnected fates as they lie together in a final, eternal embrace. Now that we're all caught up on the plot, let's go through some of the cinematics, the visuals, the sound, the costumes, and the acting, because there's so many incredible, outstanding aspects that went into this movie, and I'm sure you've heard a lot of it by now, but I just wanted to tell you about some of my favorite things that I came across. It's important to remember that the original Nosferatu was considered an expressionist film, which, like other expressionist art, is focused on feeling over realism. A great example of this in cinema would be a Tim Burton movie. You know, there's the exaggerated sets, exaggerated production design, characters. Robert Eggers takes it the complete opposite direction and uses cinematic cues from the original film without ever diving into this expressionist style. So, in fact, most of the film was cinematically shot as real as possible, having used the exteriors of the Romanian castle that Vlad the Impaler himself was imprisoned in, as well as over 2,000 real rats and hand-built sets. If you're unfamiliar with Vlad the Impaler, he's the guy, he's the man, he's the vamp. He is the, I don't even know what to call him, like, he's the guy that Dracula is based off of. I really do think that the sacrifice in Nosferatu, the virgin sacrifice, is a reference to Vlad the Impaler, Dracula. I came across something somewhere that said people used to send sacrifices up to him. Robert Eggers has made 4 feature films with his cinematographer. I need to know how to pronounce this. How to pronounce Jaren?
Jaren.
Jaren. Okay. Robert Eggers has made 4 features with his cinematographer Jaron Blaschke, honing the stylistic choices prepared for Nosferatu. The film can be mistaken as being shot for day for night, which is a technique where filmmakers will shoot during the day but light the scene for nighttime digitally in post-production. I came across a bunch of things online that said they shot this movie day for night, but I also came across an article from IndieWire interviewing Jaron Blaschke himself where he says, "We never shot day for night. Everything in the Moonlight was shot with a short pass filter, which essentially allows the ultraviolet blues and greens to pass through while blocking the oranges and yellows and reds. So any warm color that may have appeared on camera is filtered." It is really impressive that you can read the expressions on the actors' faces. Well, most of them, because there is a conscious decision to light Orlok by masking him in shadows at first, forcing the audience to strain to see him. The lighting is warm and saturated by firelight. As the story progresses, we get more and more of him in better and brighter lighting, as if the veil was thinning around him. Like, we go from the very first scene to like being is that him? Like, is that the vamp? Is that just a random guy? To being like in the absolute daylight. I really enjoyed that, and once I picked up on it, I was like, oh my gosh, the lighting choices are just so fun in this movie. The score was done by Robin Carolyn, who also scored for The Northman, another of Robert Eggers' films. As for sound design, I think the thing that stuck out to me most was the low rattle of Count Orlok's voice, since it sort of mirrored the Victorian horse bells used on his carriage, which the carriage scene where Nicholas Hoult gets in the carriage to go to the castle, I want that on my wall. I want it printed in high definition. So stunning. I loved it. I just remember seeing that and being like, I'm never going to forget looking at this shot. Back to the sound design though, the low rattle of his voice mirroring the horse bells used on that carriage. Most of the credit goes to actor Bill Skarsgard for doing the voice work required for his character. Also, I did notice there was obviously some producing, not that his voice was altered in any way, just the sound might have been more enhanced. But Bill Skarsgard did say he used an opera coach to bring his voice to the lowest octave possible. And I think having that big reveal in the audience for the first time was incredible. He truly transforms. And one of the most integral parts of his voice work was the breathiness that he had. I kept thinking about the death rattle. You're quite literally on your deathbed and your body is shutting down, and it's a rattle that comes from your lungs as you breathe. It's like exactly just like Bill Skarsgård portrayed, which was, I just think, such an incredible choice.
It is a black omen to journey in poor health.
Just also because he's on the brink of death himself, but he is the undead, and I just loved it. Very unexpected creative choice. Lily Rose Depp also shocked the audience with her own voice and movement work, mastering the art of fearful convulsions.
Absolutely no CG manipulation on her physicality. All of the writhing and the tremoring is Lily.
There's no vanity, it's just instinctual, and it's ugly, and it's just refreshing to see an actress of her generation pull off something that is quite masterfully difficult.
So much power with her performance.
Her dedication to not only the physicality but also emotion during these scenes was especially impressive. How she could have a single tear, a twisted face. The entire cast was great though. Outstanding work. Willem Defoe captured my heart with his eccentric and humorous Professor Albin. There was like little nods of humor, little lines that were quite funny. Like, I personally think back to when Thomas is signing the papers over to Count Orlok, and he's like looking at it, he's like, this isn't even in English, like how can I sign this? And Count Orlok just goes, it's my forefathers' languages, don't worry about it, it's important to me. There are little moments for humor, especially through Willem Dafoe's character, who is right out the gates just more of a warm energy than we've seen throughout the film yet. His comedic pacing just really allowed space for humor without disrupting the integrity of the story. Nicholas Hoult also proves he has range once again, with the subtle yet impactful expressions that showcase deep fear and emotions.
Come by the fire. Your face shows you unwell.
the scene where he is meeting with Count Orlok for the first time, he's twisting his face in a way that is like he's got beads of sweat and he's just like shaking in his boots. But it allows the audience to feel what it might have felt to be in the presence of an ancient vampire. Costumes, though, we need to talk about the costumes because they were highly praised, having historically accurate pieces that whispered secrets of the macabre, from Count Orlok's sheepskin cloak to the weathered, storied fabrics of villagers. The costumes serve as a vessel to the narrative, grounding the film in that realism that Robert Eggers captures so masterfully. So while Orlok's mustache and cloak are unique to him compared to any other vampire we've seen on screen yet, they evoke something rooted in reality while still alluding to the iconic silhouette of a vampire in a cape. 100 years later, and we are still rebooting, reimagining, and remaking this gothic romantic tale. It is, and always has been, the film that cannot die. Like this video, subscribe to my channel. If you made it to the end of this video, please leave me like a little bat emoji in the comments. I think that would be so cute, like a little inside joke between the two of us. And if you do decide to press all those important buttons, the liking, the subscribing, you know how it works. Just know that you're also supporting an indie filmmaker and a writer, as well as a YouTuber. So thank you for sitting through this video with me. I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!